I wanted to ask you to tell me more about the journey that you were going to do this ayahuasca. Did I say it correctly?
Yeah, it's one of the things.
What is that? You know,
okay, well, it kind of what brought me into this area, and this was in. I had my first encounter with this in 1989.
Yeah.
Which is 27 years ago, and I was working as an assistant cameraman at the time, and I went to Iquitos in Peru, and I was doing we were doing a documentary about Michael Bentin's Peru. Michael Bentin is one of the wounds anyway.
Okay.
It sort of augments the properties of the hallucinogenic by about 5,000 times.
Wow.
And then they produce this drink, which they use to enter into altered states of consciousness. So, for example, just to give you an example of where it comes from, the Father Christmas myth of him flying the reindeer and Father Christmas flying comes from the North Lapland shamans. And the little mushrooms that you see in the Christmas cards, those lively red mushrooms with white dots,
they were weird to me, you know.
Are hallucinogenic mushrooms.
See?
Which the Lapland shamans used to use to mix their potion to go into altered states of consciousness.
Okay.
But the problem was that they used to mix this potion, and sometimes the potion would be with 1 thimble, and sometimes you needed 3 liters. I don't know how, but one of them discovered that if you mixed the potion and you made one of the deer drink it, and then you waited for the deer to pee, and then you drank the pee of the deer mixed with water, okay, you always got the perfect measure to go into an altered state of consciousness. So you knew then that through, so the deer,
this is the weird mix.
The deer taking the drugs, and the shaman taking the drugs, the old man with the beard, the shaman, going into altered states of consciousness and bringing gifts for the tribe, gifts of knowledge and wisdom. And that, which Christianity has taken most of the myths and adopted them, has become the Father Christmas myth of going off, being in Lapland, and going off into. So people don't even realize that those magic mushrooms that the deer, all the Christmas, the deer look for them because they like getting high on them. You know. Anyway, so I was in Peru, and the reason. And so my whole journey started there. I was completely against most of these practices, but I was into alternative medicine, having started using all kinds of alternative medicine. I was into my organic food. I was one of the first recyclers, you know, and so I was into really conscious about the world around. And I thought, well, here we are ignoring all this wisdom and all this knowledge that comes from indigenous cultures. Let's find out a little bit more about it. And that came from me understanding it more deeply, came from meeting the shamans in South America, in fact in Iquitos, which is a really weird place, but pretty beautiful. And we met the shamans, and they explained what happens with the ayahuasca. I had never taken ayahuasca, but I then decided that I was going to explore shamanism. I started a six-part documentary series, which never got off the ground, but which eventually led me into becoming involved in this path, joining community, living in community for 14 years, where I did all my training as a psychic and where I developed my skills and where I got the knowledge and the experience, because basically I was working on a psychic line. I was doing 20, 25 readings a day in 7 days a week for 10 years. That's thousands of readings. So that's where I've got kind of like rapid practice and just honing your skills and honing your skills and honing your skills. And then recently, a few friends of mine who have been on this journey with me for the last 30 years in different ways. One of them went on an ayahuasca healing session with some therapists in Holland that have taken the indigenous knowledge from the Amazon and brought it to the rural areas of Holland, and are helping people. And he's someone I know and respect, and he through his journeys discovered a lot of things about his childhood and himself that have helped him through. And I have some creative friends that use ayahuasca as a source of inspiration, and they actually paint and do their creative work under the influence of the ayahuasca.
So if a person wants to do this, why would you want to do this session?
Why do you say?
Why? Yeah.
Well, it's really to understand what the fact that we live in a multidimensional universe. It's really to understand that this that we see here, which is all solid, and is only so because of how we perceive it. And what the ayahuasca does is it takes your senses out of the normal way of perceiving reality, and it shows you that there are other dimensions, other ways of seeing life that don't belong to the way that we normally see it. That is just an interpretation of reality, an interpretation of how life is, that we are totally fixed on and fixated on, and most people on the planet see as the only way of seeing things. But there are other realities and other realms and other worlds, which are the ones that I work with, that exist all the time, that are really important. And recently, after 25 years, or a bit longer than that, after 27, 28 years of exploring this world and becoming a professional in it and working in it, recently through the experiences that these friends of mine have had, I've kind of had the calling to go back to where I started, to go back to the beginning, to go back to that place where I was inspired through the shamans who I was going to go and visit, and I would have done all of this 25, 26 years ago, but it didn't happen. And for me it's because I feel like I've reached a certain plateau in the work that I do, at a certain point, and I want to see if they can help me go further, and I want to see if they can help me do more. So, and I also want to see if it is anything different to the states of consciousness you get through in meditation, whether it has anything, any correlation, and also that I can have that experience, and I can. So that's the reason why I want to do that.
I can call
because
it
it's
like an expansion of the consciousness, isn't it?
Yes, I want to know if it's possible to do that. And the reason why I want to do that is because reading Ram Dass, for example, who's someone I really like, and reading his story, and reading the story of many different people who I went to a festival recently, the Let the Light In festival in AMY, which were taking place at the same time as the literary festival. So one end you had Let the Light In, and the other end you had the literary festival. And the literary and our festival was about, and I saw a very interesting lecture on how psychedelics are being used at the moment to cure depression, and how this group of therapists have found that under very controlled conditions they're using LSD to cure depression. And in the research that they're doing, they're discovering that it's the most effective way of curing depression. Sometimes one session with two therapists in a very controlled environment and it just reminded me that that's what shamans do. They give people hallucinogenics, not LSD, but ayahuasca and peyote and the different mixtures that different people use, and different medicine men use at different parts of the world. It's almost like that knowledge is there, but we're being told it's dangerous. You can't go into it. Ayahuasca and LSD and all of this. We've been sold the story that these are very dangerous things to do. and yet the more I read about it and the more I explore it and the more I hear the accounts of people who are highly respected and extremely spiritual, like Ram Dass,
Yeah.
who opened the doors of perception, like Don Juan in Carlos Castaneda's books and various other authors. You get this sense of something being there which is quite valuable. So I've decided to open myself up in a very controlled way
Yeah.
to this process, and I'd like to sort of document it and see.
So you're going to...
So I'm going to go to Holland if I can,
Okay.
or I'm still looking, but there's a group in Holland that I'm going to go to 3 or 4 months' time.
I heard about a group in Brazil or something like somewhere in jungle.
There's groups in Brazil, Peru,
Brazil.
Ecuador, Venezuela.
So basically you don't have to go to jungle to do this. You can do this session in Europe.
Yes and no, because the experience as described by the people that in Holland, who were all trained therapists, really is more of a therapeutic journey. Okay, but the experience as described by, there's a book that I read from this shaman that I met in Iquitos who introduced me to the whole thing. He had a Danish, what do you call the people that study plants and the properties of plants and the medicines? You know, he's kind of like a herbalist of some sort. But you know, he was a PhD, and he was studying the properties of all the herbs that are used to heal by shamans in this area of Iquitos. And he was working with this particular shaman that I could have worked with, but unfortunately it never quite happened. And he wrote a book of his passage through the 3 initiations that you go through to become a shaman. And the first step was where you go to the clinic and you take ayahuasca, and the first week is about clearing your system on an energetic level. So the first week will be an extremely unpleasant week.
The whole week? Oh my
Yeah,
God.
it'll be an extremely unpleasant week.
I'm
where
not sure if I can handle that.
Basically,
session.
yeah, you will be excreting from every orifice for the whole week.
Okay, sorry.
But if you think about it, it's a really deep cleansing of one's energetic field, and so everything that's needed to be expunged, both physically, mentally, and spiritually, yeah, it's expunged. And then after that week, you're ready to start the journey of exploring. So you have a week of cleansing, and then once the cleansing is finished, which, you know, some people do it in 1 or 2 days, some people can do it in a week, but basically once you stop vomiting, having diarrhea and all those things, you're ready to start, you're cleansed, and you're ready to start the journey of connection to the altered states of consciousness. And the first thing that this shaman does is he calls a spirit from the jungle to come and befriend you, who's going to be your guide forever into the secrets of the knowledge of the jungle. And this man from Denmark met an ant.
An ant? So he was following an ant.
And the ant, no, the ant, the spirit of the ant came to him in the trances, and the ant then started taking him to whatever it is that he needed. And he built a relationship with the spirit. So whenever he takes ayahuasca, and particularly the potion that's mixed in this area of Iquitos by the shaman, which he has in Denmark, okay, he connects to that power animal that came from the jungle, and whatever he needs, either for healing himself or for work he's doing with other people, the ant will guide him to the knowledge that's required for the healing that needs to take place at that moment.
I am personally, yeah.
And that's a completely different system to the one in Holland, where it's much more psychotherapeutic, where you're basically revealing, experiencing love, experiencing a deep connection with yourself, releasing negative experiences and negative images that are there, under the guidance of some very, very good therapists who are trained, experienced therapists who are trained in all kinds of practices and have come together to form this group. So you've got about 8 of them that guide the groups and take people through the experience of healing that needs to take place. If you're there because you either want to expand the consciousness, you either want to look at a different reality, but this is not recreational.
What if I don't want to be in a group, if I'm embarrassed or something, you know, like I don't feel comfortable? Can I do this personally alone with like having a personal session?
Yeah, you can.
Possibilities.
You can, but what's important is the energy of the group, because this world is a shared experience, and so when you share your experience with different people, it's, imagine that, you know, most people think that we are human beings with a spirit, okay, when the reality is that we're spirits having a human experience, okay, and so when you think about it, you then with 30 human beings realizing that they're spirits having a human experience and all sharing the power and the intensity of that realization and the love and the strength that comes through it. So I'm quite torn by whether I do this on my own and it gets filmed, or whether I do it in a group and I share the experience of having another 30 people there all sharing the same experience.
So are you going to go?
I don't know. But if you were doing it in Iquitos, it's a clinic. It's like there's 20, 30 people. The shaman doesn't have time to treat you on your own.
Just follow one.
You know, it's like you're going to a busy clinic and there's 30 that are going through it, and it takes everyone through it. And remember that also in that part of the world, this is what the indigenous people, the working class, poor people, they use shamans. They can't afford doctors. And so this is, and some of the hospitals in that area are not run by doctors. They're run 30% doctors and 70% brujos, healers, shamans.
It's kind of Asian healing, you know, not nowadays medicine.